In the morning of May 30th, 2005, the 124 students of Mountain Brook High School who had been on a 5-day trip to Aruba were ready for their flight back home, all except Natalee Holloway. Natalee's hotel room looked normal. Her bags were packed, her passport was there, but she was nowhere to be found, and no one had an idea of where she could be. While other students got on the plane to return home, the search for Natalee began. Where was Natalee? What happened to her? And how did she disappear? 18-year-old Natalee was a grade A student who had just graduated high school a few weeks earlier. She and 124 other students of Mountain Brook High School arrived in Aruba on Thursday, May 26, 2005 for a graduation trip. They were supposed to visit the beaches, party, and just have fun for the next 5 days. There were 7 adult chaperones accompanying the students on the trip because their parents didn't think it wise to allow a bunch of teenagers travel unsupervised to an island where they knew no one. Upon arrival, the students and the chaperones settled in at the Hotel Inn Resort, located on the northern part of the island. The chaperones were there to make sure everything went fine, but they were not mandated to know the students' every move. As expected, the next few days were filled with lots of partying for the students. They were wild and free and spent most of the time drinking. This is a common behavior found among teenagers, but these students were a little bit extra. Things got so heated that the inn where they were staying asked them to never return. On March 29th, the students went out to Carlos and Charlie's bar and nightclub in Orangestad to enjoy their last night on vacation. While they were there, 17-year-old Dutch national Joran van der Sloot engaged Natalee and her friends in a conversation. Natalee and van der Sloot were seen drinking and dancing together as the night went on. At about 1:30 a.m. on March 30th, Natalee's classmates saw her leave the club with her new friend van der Sloot. They left in a car alongside 2 of van der Sloot's friends, Deepak and Saltish Kalpo. What no one knew was that this would turn out to be the last time anyone would set their eyes on Natalee. Van der Sloot was a student of the International School of Aruba, while 21-year-old Deepak and 18-year-old Satish were brothers from Suriname. The students were scheduled to return home in a few hours, but Natalee probably just wanted to have one last adventure with her new friends. Unfortunately, things didn't go as she hoped they would. When Natalee failed to show up for departure that morning, the authorities were immediately informed, and they initiated a search for her around the island. One of the chaperones called Natalee's mother, Beth Holloway Twitty, to inform her that they couldn't find their daughter. Beth, her husband George Twitty, other family members, and some friends got on a rented jet and arrived in Aruba that same night. As soon as they arrived, they joined the search for Natalee, determined to leave no stone unturned. It didn't take long for them to arrive at the Holloway Inn where the students had stayed, and somehow the hotel's manager was able to identify van der Sloot. They even got his full name and address. Armed with this information, Beth and the search party took their findings to the police. Within 4 hours of their arrival in Aruba, the Twittys and their friends, accompanied by 2 policemen, went to the residence of van der Sloot. Van der Sloot told the search party that himself, Natalee, and his 2 friends left the party and drove to a lighthouse where Natalee hoped to see sharks. He stated that around 2 a.m. that morning, they drove Natalee to her hotel, and that as she was getting down from the car, she fell down, probably due to the amount of alcohol she had consumed. He said as he and his friends were driving away, they saw a dark man dressed as a security guard approach Natalee, and that was the last time they had seen her. The search for Natalee took a whole new dimension on June 1st, with hundreds of Aruban locals volunteering in the search. For the next few weeks, volunteer groups from the United States, the Aruban police, and Dutch Marines were combing the island and shoreline, searching for Natalee, but it seemed like she had vanished into thin air. On the 5th of June, the police arrested 2 security guards that worked in a nearby hotel as suspects in the case. However, they were released a few days later without any charges. While the search party continued in their search, the police were doing everything to find a suspect. On June 9th, Van der Sloot and the Kalpoe brothers were arrested. They had been the last people to see Natalee, so of course it was very likely that they had a hand in her disappearance. The suspicion around them increased when the boys began to alter their accounts of what happened that night. The Kalpoe brothers told the authorities that they had dropped Natalee van der Sloot at a beach close to the Holiday Inn. Van der Sloot insisted that he left Natalee sitting by the beach and walked home. The Kalpoe brothers were released on the 4th of July in accordance with the judge's order, but Van der Sloot was detained for another 60 days. On July 26th, the authorities received a tip from a local gardener who claimed to have seen Van der Sloot and the Kalpoe brothers digging a hole next to a nearby hotel. Acting on this tip, the police began to drain a small pond next to the hotel, but by July 30th, they stopped draining the pond. The search for Natalee was intense. For weeks, the authorities searched the areas with cadaver dogs and airplanes, yet they turned up empty. Months after Natalee's disappearance, the Tweedies, together with some well-meaning donors, began to offer cash rewards for any information leading to either her safe return or the discovery of her remains. In August 2005, police rearrested the Kalpoe brothers alongside a new suspect in connection to another case where they allegedly behaved inappropriately with a young girl. However, the brothers were released in September. Van der Sloot, who had been in prison, was also released. After his release, Van der Sloot granted multiple interviews explaining his version of what had happened that night. During one of these interviews, Van der Sloot stated that he and Natalee had gone to the beach that night, and she began making sexual advances at him, but he turned her down because he didn't have a condom with him. He stated that Natalee wanted them to spend more time at the beach, but he decided to call it a night because he had to go to school in the morning. At around 3 a.m., his friend Satish came and picked him up, and they left Natalee sitting by the beach. However, Satish's lawyer countered Van der Sloot's story, saying that Satish was in bed by that time and did not pick Van der Sloot from the beach. Although Van der Sloot had given different accounts of the events of that night and was clearly acting suspicious, there was not enough evidence to charge him for Natalee's disappearance. The search for Natalee continued for months and turned into years. In April 2007, Van der Sloot and a reporter worked together and published a book titled The Case of Natalee Holloway. That same month, a team of investigators launched a search in Van der Sloot's family residence and found nothing relating to the case. The next month, the authorities searched the family house of the Kalpoe brothers. They also found nothing. The case eventually went cold and remained that way until March 29, 2010, when things took a new turn. Van der Sloot sent an email to Beth Tweedie's lawyer, John Q. Kelly, offering to tell the truth about Natalee's death and the location of her body. At this time, the reward for any information leading to the discovery of Natalee's remains was set at $250,000. Van der Sloot asked for an advance payment of $25,000, saying he would collect the rest of the money after the remains were found. Desperate to help the Tweedies get closure, Kelly paid a first installment of $15,000, and then Van der Sloot took him to a house and claimed that Natalee was buried underneath it. The information turned out to be false, but by then Kelly had already paid the remaining $10,000 in cash. With the money, Van der Sloot traveled to Peru for a poker tournament. On May 30th, 2010, 5 years after the disappearance of Natalee, Van der Sloot killed 21 Stephanie Flores Ramirez in his hotel room in Peru. On June 3rd, he was arrested in Chile and extradited to Peru for the murder of Flores. This time, Van der Sloot confessed to the killing, claiming that Flores had looked through his laptop without his permission, which caused him to lose his temper. He was sentenced to 28 years in prison for the murder in January 2012. That same January, a judge signed a petition filed by Dave Holloway, Natalee's father, asking that she be declared dead. Dave had filed the petition in June 2011, but Beth contested it. However, it was eventually signed and Natalee Holloway was declared dead. But the case was far from over. In June 2023, van der Sloot was extradited from Peru to the United States to face charges for extortion and wire fraud against Beth Twitty. He pleaded not guilty to 1 count of extortion and 1 count of wire fraud. In a shocking turn of events, van der Sloot decided to make a confession that would leave the whole country in shock. On October 18, 2023, Joran van der Sloot wrote down the real incidents of the night Natalee disappeared. He stated that he made sexual advances towards her, but she refused his advances. Angered by her rejection, he kicked her and hit her with a cinder block until she died before his eyes. He then disposed of the body by dumping it into the ocean. Nearly 2 decades after her disappearance, the mystery of what happened to Natalee Holloway on that fateful day in March 2005 had finally been solved. Van der Sloot's confession did help give closure to Natalee's parents and loved ones, but it begged the question, why was her body never found? The authorities had searched the waters around the beach where she was last seen, but their search was futile. Natalee Holloway will forever remain in the hearts of all those that loved her.